Good evening. My name is Samantha Marshall. I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement here at the University of Toledo Alumni Association. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening for a panel discussion focusing on mental health for educators. As we continue to reach out to our alumni and friends around the world during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have added virtual programming in hopes of providing opportunities for alumni to engage and connect with each other during these challenging times. As a friendly reminder to those of you in attendance, all participants are currently on mute and this program is being recorded. Please feel free to use the chat function to ask questions throughout the event. The format for tonight's event will consist of a panel discussion with UToledo faculty and alumni who will cover the importance of promoting mental health for our educators and best practices on how to manage your mental health during a pandemic. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for tonight's discussion, Dean of the Judith Herb College of Education, Dr. Raymond Witte.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Obviously, I don't have to tell you how interesting 2020 has been, and obviously 2021 continues to be, especially in regards to everything around us. And that's obviously the case for school and trying to get everything moving forward. As we kind of talked, we thought what could be more important than talking about mental health, especially for our educators who in addition to doing everything that they're trying to do to provide quality education, they're feeling the stresses and strains of just all the events around them, just like everyone else is. So we pulled together some very talented individuals to hopefully go over some questions that have maybe you've been thinking about, and maybe questions that you could bring to the discussion tonight that we could investigate and hopefully all better benefit from as part of this discussion. If you would, let me introduce the panelists for the conversation tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce Ms. Rochelle Ford. She's an alumni of the college, background in adolescent and young adulthood education, currently has a master's in counseling education, and she serves as the counselor for Timberstone Junior High School in the Sylvania School District. Another panelist, obviously well known to, I think, a number of us here on the university, is Dr. Pescara-Kovach. She's an associate professor of educational psychology here at the university, and she also serves as the director for the Center for Education in Mass Violence and Suicide, and is chair of the University of Toledo Mass Violence Collaborative. Our final panelist is Dr. Sammy Spann. Dr. Spann currently serves as the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and the Dean of Students at the University of Toledo. Now, we have a list of questions that we will be addressing. You can certainly introduce your questions as well through the chat box mechanism, and we will be happy to try to address those when available. So I'm going to ask Rochelle to respond to the first question that was set up, and let me read that question. It's, what mental health adjustments do you suggest for teachers who are balancing life in person and remote teaching? Rochelle?
Thank you, Dr. Witte. I first want to say I'm the only one here without the doctor in front of my name. So, you know, I am in this with everyone though, and experiencing this along with everyone in my school counseling position. And I've ridden the roller coaster this past year. So I'm trying to figure it out too, along with everybody else. So what I have to offer is just from my own experience and the inspirations I've tried to gather from everything and everywhere and everyone I meet along the way. So it was funny though, one of my co-counselors, one of my good friends, she put me on to Brene Brown's podcast recently. I don't know if anybody listens to that, Dr. Kovach, that seems like something that would be down your alley. Anyways, she has a whole podcast about first times and how we need to be uncomfortable during the first time when we experience something. She says that we need to name what we're feeling and own it. And that really resonated with me because, as educators, we want to be the master of what we're doing. We're supposed to know what we're doing all the time, and not every day is the same, but we know what we're going in to do every day when we go to work. And 2020, going into 2021 has not been that way. So to allow ourselves, those adjustments would be to allow ourselves to name what we're feeling and own what we're feeling and start there. We have to acknowledge what we're going through and talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about the fact that you are feeling totally out of control, totally disorganized, whatever it is. And, different people are feeling different ways. So some people love remote learning and they love teaching online, while others, it is just absolutely frustrating and really difficult for some people. So it's important too to acknowledge how other people are kind of feeling through all of this, because everybody's feeling something different, experiencing this differently, while at the same time balancing what we have going on at home. We were just talking about how we're doing this from home. This is not in person. It's new and it's different. And I too have my dog in the back room and 2 kids upstairs, and they've promised me they'd be quiet, That's how things are now. So we have a lot of balancing going on as well. So the 3 things that Brene Brown really said that goes along with this is, she says, first, to normalize your experience, your first time experience, whatever it is. And in this case, it's 2020 COVID-19. And we don't know what we're doing. Nobody knows what the right answer is to this. And we need to normalize that. And we're all living it. Everybody's experience is different going through it, but we're all living it. So normalize that and be okay with the fact this is the first time that we're doing this, that we're teaching like this, or that we're counseling, or we're building administrators like this. And we don't know what we're doing. We're really, the ship is sailing and we don't know how, we don't have a paddle, it's just, we're kind of just making it up as we go. And it's just going to have to be okay that way. I think luckily people are starting to get into the groove, but into some type of groove. But I know it's an ever-changing situation that we're in. So first, to normalize it, talk about how you're feeling, talk about how you are having this first-time experience, and maybe it's not going great, and talk about that. And I think it's important for our kids in our classrooms as well as our kids at home, our family members, to know that maybe this is hard for us too. So to talk about it and normalize it. The second thing was to put into perspective. It's not going to be this way the whole time. So things will change, and I'd say, dare I say, that it's gotten a little easier since it's begun. Not because the situation's easier, just the manner in which we are working has become more routine than it was at the beginning. So putting this into perspective, it will get easier. It will not always be this way. And then the last thing she said, which is really difficult for me, is to put your expectations in check. So reality check your expectations, she calls it. You can't function the way you used to in this setting. So adjusting your expectations, not necessarily lowering your expectations, just adjusting them a little bit to have it match reality a little bit more. Take some pressure off of yourself, and really, I guess, put your priorities first. This has been a really tough year for a lot of people, and we've got to keep our priorities in mind and our families in mind and things like that. So making sure our expectations really match our reality. So those three things would be the adjustments, I guess. I wish we were more like a car. You could go in and just like make an adjustment and everything's good. But normalizing, so making sure that you understand that we're all in this together. We don't know what we're doing, and that's okay. Putting it into perspective, and then reality checking your expectations. Those would be the adjustments.
Okay, very, very good. Any comments from the other panelists? Any add-ons? I like the comment that was made. In fact, I've heard the notion of, as a pilot adjusts their course and their flight plan based on, all kinds of issues, weather, atmospheric pressure, whatever. I think that's a very insightful kind of notion of we're constantly in that flux, and just recognizing that that's okay is really important because that's what it's going to take. Every time we think we've got something figured out, something new happens or there's a twist on something, and we then have to kind of correspond to that change. So I think that's very useful information. So thank you.
I think when you said, what was it, put your emotions, or there was something in check, right? Your expectations for yourself. We do that a lot, and that's a contributor to so many problems as we get in our own heads, and in our own heads, we're the only one feeling this way, So we look at people around us and say, he seems so calm. She seems to just be able to handle it. And here I am, I'm so stressed out. I don't understand what's wrong with me. And that's sort of that self-doubt. And when we talk a little bit more about depression, that's almost like you have your own little bully in your head that you're carrying around that's berating you constantly, right? And it's hard to get out of your head. So when you say connected, I like that as well, because we need to remind one another that we're here. We need to work sort of as a unit, because I think with this whole social distancing, everyone does feel isolated, even if we're together but apart, in terms of technology. So I really like that, expectations. And again, one of the symptoms, one of the diagnostic criteria for depression is often guilt, and it's that feeling of, wait a minute, why do I feel like this when I have everything? Or why do I feel like this when no one else does? Well, we can't forget that everyone around us, we're all navigating it together, right? And people are wearing the same mask we are, So if someone's struggling with depression, it's almost as though they have that mask on at work, or they try to, not really show it. And everyone has their struggles. So I think the more we talk about how we're feeling at this time, the better. I'm not saying we hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but, we need to work, more, I guess, as a unit than we have. Good
point. Rochelle, if we could move right into the second one, because it's actually kind of connected, I think, to the first. What would you indicate as some good practices to promote educator resilience and such, especially dealing with personal and social demands? I mean, you even shared a little bit about, the kids, the dog, life goes on, those kinds of things. What have you found? What have you experienced with your colleagues out in the field that they've either utilized or considered to kind of maintain that resilience and that ability to persevere?
Yeah, they are directly connected. You're right. I think Dr. Kovach is going to touch on this a little bit. But I think what we're going through right now is traumatic. And I think we have to remember that trauma is a body experience. It's not just a one-time thing that we go through. And viewing it that way, knowing that what we're going through is really a body experience, and it impacts us in different ways. People are losing sleep, people are depressed, people are anxious, they're taking up new habits, or, things that aren't good ways of coping. The cool thing about resiliency is that it actually helps heal those scars of trauma. both mentally and physically. So your resiliency skills, the more you practice, the more that you work on your skills or maybe learn some new skills, the more you can heal that past, that traumatic past or this traumatic year. So figuring out, how am I feeling? What is it that I'm feeling? And figuring out a way to kind of target, maybe come up with some strategies to target how you're feeling. It's kind of worrisome because the long-term effects of trauma can actually be life-threatening. There's some research that connects trauma and heart disease, depression, suicidality, things like that. So it's important, it's imperative that we all have practiced our resiliency skills and our coping strategies. It was probably 2019, I started a trauma-informed educator program, and they focus on something called the Circle of Courage. And it's basically a youth development model for your resiliency skills. So there's 4 universal principles to being a resilient, emotional, healthy individual. And I think just thinking of these 4 things, we can kind of put ourselves in check a little bit. What am I lacking? What area do I feel like I am weak in right now? And the 4 areas, the first one is mastery, which when you think of educators want to be the masters of their subject, their practice, of their classroom. And that's just not been the case. It has not been the case this last year. We're in our classroom, we're not in our classroom, we're online, we're not online. It's just been, I know the fun word in my district is pivot. We've been pivoting constantly. So we're so used to achieving what we want to achieve, whether it's like making sure we get through chapter 15 of the math textbook, or whatever it is. We're used to reaching our goal every year because every year is somewhat predictable and we know where we'll get. And it's just not been that way for now 2 school years. And if that's an area you feel like you're lacking in, you may feel inadequate right now. You may feel unmotivated, possibly feel like giving up. I've heard that. I don't know how many times. I just give up. I can't do this. I mean, we all keep doing it, but you just feel like you want to give up, just feel defeated. The second area is independence, and that comes with the responsibility that we have within our classroom and running our classroom the way that we feel fit, or our office or our buildings. And being a leader in your building, having the autonomy of a teacher, that's the area of independence, and we don't feel independent right now. Suddenly we have other people that feel like they are helping to teach and helping to, actually parents are helping to teach right now. So there's not as much of that responsibility and leadership anymore. So someone that might be feeling a lack of independence would be maybe a low confidence right now, a lack of control, and maybe feeling powerless. So mastery and independence are the first 2 universal principles. The third one is belonging. And this is huge, because how can you feel like you belong with anyone or anywhere when you have to be 6 feet from everyone, where there's no shaking hands or giving hugs anymore? It's so uncomfortable. I know when I would walk down the hall and visit teachers during lunch, there'd be 10, 12 teachers eating together. And now there's 2 in their own classrooms, 2 people eating together. So that sense of belonging is so important, especially for educators. And it's not there because we can't get together. We can't get together. So that's a tough one. So people are feeling alienated and withdrawn and affectionless, that affection piece, that touch, that even just talking to people that you used to talk to every day, you don't see them as much anymore. So I think a lot of us are missing that sense of belonging. And then the last one is generosity. And when you think of teachers, you think of generosity, because they're giving compassionate people. And It's just not as easy anymore when you walk into a classroom and there's plexiglass everywhere, you know, or the teacher's desks are surrounded by plexiglass. It's just a little bit crazy. People are becoming non-sociable, you know, they're just not themselves anymore. So those 4 areas are ways to kind of, if you can kind of gauge where you're feeling with those 4 areas, you can kind of decide, what could I do to improve that area, that principle of emotional health? So I just wrote down a couple examples. If mastery, that area of feeling like you might give up or you feel inadequate or unmotivated, that expectation reality check would be really helpful. You know, making sure that you check in and, am I expecting too much of myself? Just so that you can feel some success, you know. Breaking up some tasks, making sure you don't have a to-do list that's like 3 pages long. Break things up, just to feel success. Like I said, that area of independence, if I'm talking too much, you guys can let me know. The area of independence, the autonomy, the responsibility, maybe lacking some control and some confidence, making some plans for changes. So making sure you're prepared if we have to go remote again, or, you know, just feeling like maybe you have, if things are kind of out of control, maybe getting a new planner, making a to-do list, not 3 pages long, but a manageable to-do list. And ask for help. It's okay to ask for help if you're feeling like you're just a little bit out of control or a lot of it out of control. It's okay to pull in your team. I'm always telling my kids, who's your team? Who are you going to bring in when you need help? So who is that? Who is on your team? A sense of belonging. So you're alienated, you're withdrawn, feeling affectionless. You have to actually decide to make some intentional connections with people. I know we can't hug, we can't touch, but we can make some intentional connections with some people in our buildings. You know, maybe there's somebody at church or somebody at your second job, or, you know, whatever, at the gym that you want to make an intentional connection with. That would help with that sense of belonging. Come up with a hobby, join a new group, something like that. And then that last bit, the sense of generosity, the sense of needing to give back. That's a tough one because it's been a rough year and our feelings are all over the place all the time. But seeking out some chances to practice empathy would help. And to, you know, maybe practice some community service, giving back to your school or your community would be really helpful too. And those random acts of kindness or the random compliments always help too. It feels good to make other people feel good. So that's a great way to I guess gain back that feeling of generosity. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
All right, those are all excellent. I'm going to jump right to Lisa because you provided a wonderful bridge in the sense of, Lisa, the question that I think is, you know, there are several center questions, and one is, you know, we all have the stress. We're all worried about, you know, is this just a little bit? Is this a lot? Am I really starting to get close to being what I might say slightly depressed, whatever? You know, what do you think, how should we kind of approach this, and what things can we do to kind of address these issues in our lives each and every day?
You know, I think Rochelle mentioned asking for help. That's a huge one with this. And it's very stigmatized, right? So it's very hard for us to vocalize and say, I feel depressed or I feel anxious. I think first and foremost, we need to understand, we need to reflect on the fact that our brain is another organ, right? So we wouldn't hesitate to say, I have this pain in my heart. I'm my well-being. You know, you don't hesitate. When it comes to your mental health, you don't reach out that way. So I think we need to be comfortable talking about this. This is a time right now, there's suicide and, you know, among students, the younger ages has been drastically increasing, and it's even higher now. So, you know, it used to be the second leading cause of death in 10 to 24-year-olds, and now I would probably guess it's the first, in part due to the pandemic. And again, it's, are we having the conversations? Are we asking for help? But then are we also there for people who need us? And again, you know, you need to remind you know, everyone that I'm here for you. I'm not going to judge you. One of the first things, if I guess I'll approach it as maybe helping someone else, right? So it would be to just remind them that you're here. And also, if it gets to a point where you know this is significant, so if you're seeing a lack of interest in, you know, those activities they used to enjoy, if you're seeing withdrawal, if you're seeing that they're sleeping too much or sleeping too little, gaining a lot of weight, or, you know, losing a lot of weight, all those changes that we in the mental health field recognize, more people need to recognize. And, you know, we need to look, right? We need to look at people with our eyes wide open so we can see what's going on. You can usually sense something, right? We all come into the world with what Gavin de Becker called the gift of fear. And that's just intuition. It's not a gift of fear. It's when something seems not quite right, it usually isn't. So if you see some sort of a change in someone, it's okay to say, are you okay? Some level of stress, some level of anxiety is normal. It's this prolonged stress, and unfortunately, that's what we're seeing, is this prolonged stress and some trauma. Even parents who unwittingly watch the news, or if you're a teacher and you're showing students something on the news, we can't. We can't keep bombarding our brain with these stressors and these frequent traumas. So it's choosing self-care, choosing self-help, and you know, offering, going for a walk with someone else, or, you know, could we go for a walk and stay socially distanced outside? And, you know, it's having some things, that some outlets. I think often people will say, well, how do you even study what you study without falling apart? And my thing is, the dumbest television and movie programs you could possibly name, I have to laugh. For me, I have to laugh because what I do is very difficult. So, you know, it's hard. This question is tough because in terms of, you know, helping ourselves and helping someone else, and we're very hesitant to help ourselves. We usually, like I mentioned earlier, spend a lot of time beating ourselves up and maybe not recognizing our own feelings. When you are right now observing people around you and you know they're being subjected to trauma, you have to listen to key words. And I think, you know, Dean Witte, you know this, right? So helplessness, I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. I feel useless. You know, those are all those red flag words that those of us, you know, who are familiar with mental health look for, and they sort of jar us when we hear that. Or I'm exhausted. I'm just exhausted. And you should physically exhausted. It's okay to ask those prying questions like a therapist. I recently read an article that said, in times like this, we can all be therapists, but we're not going to diagnose. We're just going to, you know, make sure everyone's okay. And that's sort of what we need to do. And those key warning signs, like I said, those words. And if it's students you're worried about, can manifest things a little bit differently. Students who are acting out, you know, I think we in our country have a tendency to say, oh, that student struggles with attention deficit, or, you know, there's some hyperactivity and impulsivity there. Sometimes if you can't put a label on your feelings, you're just going to sort of behave in such a way that, you know, it looks to be out of control. But, you know, our students, some of the younger ones, don't have an emotional vocabulary. And I think of even my own college students, and so often they'll miss an exam or something will happen and they won't tell me their struggles until after the fact. And I always say, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to waive this because I can sense that distress. And I've been in this long enough to know when it's not real, but, you know, everybody's struggling. So we have to not only be patient with ourselves, but be patient with our students as well. There are a couple good apps. I know I hate to say this. These are not, again, these are not diagnosticians. These are not anybody who's going to give great therapy, but it's important for people who are worried about others to have this. It's an app that I've been talking about for years called Suicide Safe. And it really guides you into asking key questions if you are worried about someone. Because if you sense something's wrong and you don't know what to say, it's problematic. You know, you may not say anything at all. But you can talk about suicide. You want to talk about suicide because you'll lead people to open up a little bit more instead of sort of pushing it to the side. So the Suicide Safe app is really, really good because it walks you through guiding questions. And then if you have your location services on, it will tell you within your area what services are available for people who are struggling. If someone is imminently in danger, you know, severe depression to the point that they are suicidal, a lot of times it's a 911 call. You know, I mean, it can get to the point of a 911 call. So it's important to have conversations, but it's also important not to take too much into your own hands as just someone who maybe doesn't have those therapeutic skills. I know I said a lot.
No, it's all helpful and very good. And we'll actually come back a little bit to that, I think, a little later. I want to bring Sammy into the conversation because Dr. Spann deals with this at the university on a daily basis. And his question that we kind of connected with him was what are the short and long-term impacts of not focusing on personal mental health, certainly for us, and just as importantly for our students. So, Sammy, I would love to hear your comments and thoughts regarding that question.
Am I on?
You are, sir.
All right. No, absolutely. One, I'll start out by saying burnout. You know, my background is special education, and although I've only taught 1 year in the field, I saw that a lot with teachers who either couldn't quite grasp, as you said earlier, Rochelle, adjusting their expectations. I see that burnout really quick. Depression is another great role. The Counseling Center reports to me, so I get weekly updates on things that the Counseling Center is doing. I listen to a lot of our students and the challenges that they are having, and I only can look at it and listen to it in the way of what would that mean as an educator. Eating disorders is getting to be something that's growing. You mentioned something earlier, Dr. Kovach, when you said the behaviors. We quick to say ADHD or ADD, when those behaviors are just crying out saying, I need help understanding this. In special education, we did a lot of behavior analysis on how children manifest their behavior to go along with what they're really thinking. But I want to stretch that out a little bit. I want to say adults as well, because all of us are pretty much adult adolescents, if you will. And we need that. We need to be able to be vulnerable. We need to be able to be authentic. We need to be able to say what we're feeling. Social well-being, that's a sacrifice. And you have to think a lot of times, especially working with children, the children will look at you and be a sponge. And they look at how you respond to things. I mean, you've seen, if you have children or you work with someone, you can look at a child and then go look at the grandparent and say, wow, you act just like your grandparent. Those nuances that come from you, that the child trusts you, believes in you, they pick those nuances up. So it's important to have your well-being in check as well. Also, you end up compromising that, right? If you was an extrovert and all of a sudden you're an introvert. Those are the things that I hear our students, even some of our education students, talk about a lot. I come from a family educator. My mother was a teacher. My two sisters are teachers. One is now an assistant superintendent. And I just got off the phone with her yesterday when she was talking about, I was telling her about this panel I was on. And I would just say, so, you know, what does it really mean? Rochelle, you hit a lot of the things right on the head. I know you say you don't have a PhD, but you have a PhD in experience. And those things that you talked about are absolutely pretty much, I felt like I was talking to my sister talk all over again. She was hitting on the exact same points about a sense of belonging. And usually when we start talking about sense of belonging, we think we're talking about students. We also got to think about teachers. I had a student come to me the other day and tell me, my daughter who's in high school, came to me and she said, Dad, Now, I'm looking forward to going back to school, but I feel like I'm going to be talking to my teacher through a printing glass set. Those little plastic glasses, although we look at them as something to protect us from COVID, children may see them as something totally different. You know how their imaginations are much more direct than ours. And she said, I feel like I'm talking to you in a jail cell. And that connection, that hug, that touch, it means so much. And I'm seeing a lot of adults struggling with it, even more so than children. Just walking down the hallway at my daughter's elementary school, the teachers just hug a child to say good morning to them. That is going to be like unheard of. And that scares a lot of teachers who have to go back and do that. So those are some of the things that I think about to that question that you asked, the long-term impacts. I think even if COVID was to find a solution for it tomorrow, I think there are some long-term impacts that it's going to leave behind. The residue of COVID and it's going to change us quite a bit. One thing I can say I do like is that majority of my concerns that I'm getting now from parents and students is that they're over this online. They want didn't want that in person. They want to see the students do more programming and get involved. A parent called me today and said her daughter's in the dorm room depressed because she's going from a dorm room to get something to eat back to the dorm room. That's, and my wife is at home with my daughter, which is hard because she's teaching her while working. And that could be a challenge for a lot of these teachers. And even some of the teachers that I talked to who have graduated from here, I got a student right now. She's down in Wadsworth, Ohio. She's in an elementary school. She's teaching from home. Her children in the background. She's teaching a classroom, and that's the reality that teachers. I mean, I wish we had an award to give them. I wish it was something we could definitely do because these are the silent, and they're quiet about it. They're not. I mean, out of all the political figures that've been talking, teachers have been at least the last one to come up and say what they're going through. And that within itself is a stress. So long term, I think it's going to be some profound things that are going to leave an impact, the burnout, depression, and just different various disorders. They need to have a wellness check. I would just recommend if you are out there and you call a teacher, call your kindergarten teacher if you still have her contact information, and just say, I'm thinking about you. I want you to know that I know that you're battling. Teachers to me have also shown their resiliency like Vietnam vets. If you've ever known a vet, you never know what they've been through. And they love this country and they never give it up for anything in the world. But if you dig deep and see what they've been through, it is atrocious. It's hurtful. And I see teachers in that same light. I listen to their stories and they only talk about the positive things. So this conversation right here, Dr. Witte, is timely. It is something that they need to be able to find a platform where they can express what they're feeling and not just get it validated, but just be able just to say it and get it out. For those things that you mentioned earlier, Rochelle and Dr. Kovach, are very real. The touch, the behavior, all that stuff is very vital, and it's the core of educating. And it's the essence of what makes us wonderful teachers.
I totally agree, Sammy. I think you're spot on in regards to all of that. And you're right. It's funny. Teachers, like many in kind of the care professions, take care of others. It's just something intrinsic within the chemistry and the temperament and so forth. And I mention that because all too often, they take care of everyone else, but not necessarily themselves, or they don't put themselves as a priority. So let me go back, and I'm just going to open this up to the panel. How do we make educators understand that, one, it's okay to be selfish when it comes to mental health? Because you can't help anyone else if you can't really, help yourself. And how do I make that a priority? What is it? Is it, just putting things together and making it my plan that I'm just going to follow because I know this makes me feel better, or this relieves my stress, or, whatever. But clearly, in my contacts, it's evident that I don't think educators feel like they have either a platform to kind of create their own support group, if you will. And many feel reluctant to share because we still deal with the stigma issue. I think more so perhaps with my generation. I think younger educators are maybe perhaps more open to sharing, which I think is huge, great, keep that up, but not everyone's there. So I throw that out to the committee or the panel. What are some thoughts that you have, and what have you noticed has really worked to allow educators to feel better and make mental health kind of a daily priority in a way?
I have some ideas, always. I always have ideas. First, I want to say I feel like we have a new hashtag call a teacher. That I feel like we need to start that. You know, I think in our district, at least in my experience, I think our teachers talk, but the time to make self-care a priority has been the struggle. I think I see teachers leaving our building at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night because they're preparing, you know, lessons for the kids in class, lessons for the kids at home. You know, we have to make sure everything's posted online so it's accessible. I know that some districts are making it a priority in their district to offer some type of mental health self-care type of activity built in for the teachers. I don't know what the success of that has been, but I appreciate that. I like the idea of the district saying, we know you won't make time for yourself, so we're going to make the time for you, and then to offer all different types of activities because it is important. But teachers just don't make the time for themselves. You know, it's just not a consistent thing, and that's even an issue before COVID. You know, teachers they go and go and go. So yeah, but I love the idea of a district making an initiative for all the staff to participate in. I think that would be super cool.
I'll just add, there's terrible pandemic in recent years have really destroyed the way teachers teach and how they do what they do. And then COVID hit. So the first pandemic is pretty much the political pandemic, how we have stigmatized teaching and how teaching has been seen. This is, as you said earlier, it's in the DNA of these teachers who care and are committed to it. And sometimes it's like doctors or someone who's passionate about their field, they do the best they can to take care of their students or their patients or clients, and they don't take that really good care of themselves. And that was the case prior. You know, I've seen teachers go buy school supplies and buy food for students who are in need. Meanwhile, some of them pick up second jobs. My sister worked at Sears during the summer when she was a teacher for years. And I couldn't understand for the life of me how that was. And I think that being able to have a small group, and I guess one of the questions was, what can it do? There needs to be a circle that they can go to. Who is your person or your people? You can sit down and you can just vent without worrying about it being thrown back up, and you can just say what you need to say. I think teachers need that platform. Even I commend the school districts that are doing that, like you mentioned earlier, Rochelle. But I think they need to have places to where they can talk. And it's okay to talk about mental health. I think we all have to feel the comfort of saying, I need someone right now. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you know, once you get a certain age, it doesn't shut off there. And I think we need to start making sure that is in every meeting that we have. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have the feelings that you're having. I will validate them immediately. But now let's find a way to work with you to get the support that you need in your classroom and in your personal life. Because at the end of the day, teachers don't shut off. You know, one of the biggest things that got me when I was running summer camp programs, or even when I did my first years of teaching, is when I go to the store and the students see me, their eyes open wide open, like, what do you thought? They would hung me up in the closet after you left? it's almost to like, and that's how we start thinking as teachers. We never shut off. We don't shut off. It goes on into our wee hours in the morning, and on and on and on. So to your point, Rochelle, I think that is absolutely right. You just got to make sure we do have this platform so teachers can feel that inclusive and able to reach out.
I think too, I'm going to pull it sort of way back to basics. I think little tips now and again. They always say teaching is a thankless job, and it is. So what do teachers hear a lot of right now? They might hear a lot of parental complaints. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the parents are great. But if you're a fellow teacher or you recognize something special that, one of your colleagues is doing, say it. Tell everyone, say, I'm proud of you. This is fantastic. Or, just those, it doesn't seem like much, but I know some of the biggest MBA programs will pull it all the way back to that, just those little, I think Ohio State does it, and I think they call it a high five or something. And so they'll shoot out an email, or they'll, say, okay, one of the leaders will say, we have an important meeting today. And it'll be just, congratulations, or, we're so proud of you, and we're sending you a gift card to Amazon. Everybody's using Amazon right now. So, things like that, really just those basics. And hopefully there's some school administrators out in the crowd, because, those things, and I even think of our school administrators. I know ours is phenomenal. My kids have a phenomenal administrator in Oregon, Hal Gregory, and I feel like there are moments, I'm sure the man thinks, I can't do anything right. We're going to go into school safely. And then people complain. No, we're not going to go to school. And people complain. So, it's just that really just supportive. And that's so, so important. And just, you mentioned belongingness. Community, having that community of teachers. People have done virtual happy hours. Doesn't have to be alcohol, but whatever it is, to come together. But to encourage, to tell teachers things. I remember it was probably last year, and I was shooting out emails in the middle of the night, or 2 a.m. or, oh my gosh, an email came in from a student. And it took a couple of my colleagues to say, you need to pull that back. You can't keep doing that. And then I thought, no, I have to be responsive to my students Sunday night, Saturday night, whatever. And finally, I realized it was impacting my family, right? So I had so much that I thought I had to do and so much pressure to do my job well that my own kids were sort of being slighted. So, I've read that teachers can set chunks of time, email during just this chunk of time, and that's it, right? So just making those guidelines that just basically say to yourself, it's okay if I do it this way. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with all that. I think that's all good information. I just have a really quick comment, and then Lisa, I'm going to come back to you because we want to finish off with some a little bit more detailed information. I'll just make the comment that little things matter, and you can't overemphasize how important just a little courtesy or a genuine kindness can go in regards to someone, especially when things aren't necessarily rolling the right way or things just get difficult. I stole a great little idea. We just have a simple little reach out directory where our administrators make sure that they send out emails to a group of individuals that they communicate with periodically through the semester. And it's just, hi, how are you? How you doing? Hope everything's well. Those little things, it can make a big difference. So you'd be surprised. It doesn't have to be substantial. It can be just little things that are put together that when they do happen, wow. And people realize I'm not alone. And yes, they're thinking the same things I am. So I'm I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, that's what you should be, because that's just the nature of the situation at this time. Lisa, coming back to you, obviously we've kind of talked about or kind of walked up to what might be signs of significant psychological stress. And you don't necessarily always want to think that that's what's literally the case, but usually there are some telltale signs. And I think for that reason alone, it might be really helpful just to review some of the core behaviors or symptoms that, if they happen to start being observed, it's probably enough to pay attention to, and at least ask or contact someone who might know a little bit more to reach out to that person, because you just don't want to think, should I say something, or is this something, or it's not something. You want to, if you're going to make a mistake, make it on the side of, hey, I thought I was seeing something, it's really not there. I'm so glad. I apologize for making you nervous or whatever, but I was just thinking and keeping your best interests in mind, something like that. So if you could share within the last, and we're talking about 8 or 9 minutes,
Yeah.
What things should everyone kind of stay attentive to?
Yeah, the main feature of depression is feeling down, upset, more days than not, for a span of, not even an extended period of time like some disorders, but, do you notice that someone seems to be having more bad days, more good days? And you can look at their affect, right? So how do they seem? Do they seem just sort of disengaged and down more often than not? Are they giving away belongings, right? Here's this, I don't need this anymore, or I might not need this anymore, so you can have it. Explore, what do you mean you might not need that? It's okay to ask kind of further questions. And I think that when you said, Dean Witte, have that conversation, because I would rather, I always tell people, you'd rather lose a friend temporarily if they're upset, they'll get over it, than permanently if you don't ask that question. Having the conversation, again, opens up that, I am feeling this way. And then they'll withdraw from certain things if you do get together. It's that sort of that person that's, I'm tired, saying I'm tired, saying I'm exhausted, the things I mentioned earlier. Those are very obvious signs. And if you say, do you have, if someone seems profoundly depressed and you say, do you have a plan for taking your own life? Yes, I would do such and such and such. Because on a normal day, people who aren't struggling with depression typically don't think about that. But this person, by telling you that, is indicating that I've thought about it. And this is exactly how it's going to be if I get any further down. Something else that we need to be really cautious about is if you sense someone is down and someone is depressed and sleeping more, or says, I just don't sleep, my mind is always going and I can't do anything right, that's a sign, I can't do anything right. If you sense that all of a sudden after those really dark times, all of a sudden they're almost euphoric, that's a very dangerous time. That's usually when people say, oh, this is good, quick, oh my gosh, you seem so happy. That is our red flag, that is our short time period when that person has decided sometimes that this is it. All my pain and all my suffering is going to end, tomorrow. So I'm euphoric. I'm going to get out of all this stuff. I'm going to get out of my own head and everything I can't do right. Because again, remember, sometimes it doesn't matter what we say to a person, and we do still have to compliment, but when you truly have depression, it really is very difficult to get into that person's head. You can say you're doing great, and in their mind, you're doing horribly, or they'll say you're just saying that. You're just saying that because you have to. You're saying that because you're my friend, or so it's hard to crack that. They really do need professional help. And if it means you say, you know what, I know you're hesitant. I know, some people say, ooh, a psychologist. I don't need that. Well, yeah, it's okay if you do. Or we'll take you to your family doctor, because doctors are getting more and more training. And they say, well, I don't know if I want to bring it. I'll go with you. Just joining them. And the other thing we need to, the person who is sort of withdrawing and not wanting to participate, we cannot continue to put pressure on people. I get that we're worried, but I've seen this a lot. Many people who struggle with depression, again, they feel guilty. And sometimes their friends will say, well, you never want to do anything. You never join us as a group. What's going on? And not, if someone doesn't understand depression, they may think that their friend just doesn't want to be with them, when in fact, they just don't even have the energy. So we can say, you know what, it's okay. If today is an off day for you and they're safe, there's someone home, that they're not acutely struggling and on the verge of attempting it. If you know that person's okay, just say, you know what, we'll be here. We'll be here for you no matter what. I'm here for you. When and if you do decide you want to, join us, we'd love to have you. Right. So those are the sort of open-minded questions. And I use the wrong word. I shouldn't have said attempting, but because it's all in the language, right? We no longer say committed or attempted because it criminalizes the act. We're trying to make it much less so. So actually proper terminology is, died by suicide. So even in the small ways that we're phrasing things, we can get tripped up. I'm getting used to that because I'm old school, so because some of the verbiage is just catching up with me. But being there for someone, but also please, if it's you, understand that it doesn't make you. I hate the word crazy or whatever the terms are that people tend to use. Depression is incredibly common. Anxiety is incredibly common. It's just not discussed as much, right? So some of these things happen more than high blood pressure, or happen more than we could, and even now, like, Dr. Spann said, now at greater rates. So it's okay, there's that saying, it's okay to not feel okay. And so you want to make sure that you're doing something because you deserve to be here. You deserve to be better, and you need to look to that future. We will get out of this. We will have a time. It may be a little bit different, but we will get through this. And in the meantime, if you need someone to grab your hand and pick you up or hold it, that's okay. And you do the same for someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, you're right. The pandemic will go away, but mental health will always be a necessity. And we just need to practice, just like we exercise to be healthy, we need to exercise our ability to really take care of ourselves mentally. So we're in a place that we like to be and can feel functional and happy and everything else. Do with the remaining time, I think Sam has a question that came through the chat. So Sam, I will give.
Yeah, so we did have one question that came in through the chat box, and that question is, what are a variety of ways mental health services can be delivered to school personnel?
I can't name all of them, but I will tell you one that's kind of getting a lot of more momentum, because our counseling center at university is taking a lot more traffic in it, and that is the telecounseling. Students like that because they can have a counseling session from the comfort of their own home or in their space, right? In that special place that they want to be in. And we've been seeing more traction in that. I know there are a lot of other for staff and more for adults and everyone else that's moving towards that direction. I just wanted to say that portion because when I read that email, when I read that question, it just kind of resonated with me because of what we've been going through lately. And it has been heaven sent. I think even when we get back to face, we're still going to leave that as an option, because I see that some students don't want that stigma. They don't want to walk in that door. They don't want to sit in that chair and fill out the forms or anything like that. But to be able to do it on the phone, I know telemedicine is another area that's growing. But this is something I think is going to be very useful for those.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's now going to be such that people who have struggled and maybe relapsed with something because they move. You know, you geographically relocate and you just found that, you know, therapist that you just connected with, and it's devastating if the person doesn't do phone. You know, phone is very distant, but and you know, usually it's, oh, you'll find someone. Well, now it doesn't matter. You can have those ease. It's going to be very reassuring to someone who feels like, I don't know what's going to happen to me when I'm away from this person. So yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. All right. We are at 6:30. So Sam, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. So first, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the Alumni Association to Dean Witte for moderating today's discussion. And thank you so much to all of our panelists. This virtual event was something that our Education Alumni Affiliate has wanted to do for a very long time now. And to have all of you available to share your expertise and advice to all of our educators, we're so thankful that you joined us and shared some really great tips and information for our education alumni and really just our education family in the Toledo area. So thank you again on behalf of the Alumni Affiliate. I also wanted to mention our Education Alumni Affiliate as the sponsor of this evening's program. We are looking for a variety of virtual content to push out there to our alumni and friends. So if you're interested in joining us, I know Dean Witte will agree with me in saying that we are always, always, always welcoming our education alumni to join our alumni affiliate board and really help us create some great content and programming for our education alumni and students. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. Please check your email over the next 24 hours. This program was recorded, so we will send you a link to this evening's recording. Please feel free to reference it and share it with your colleagues and friends. We also will include a couple documents that Dean Witte was kind enough to share with some mental health tips and kind of highlight some of the information that we talked about this evening. We will also include a post-event survey, so let us know how we did. If you have any additional questions for our panelists or questions that we didn't get to this evening, I'd be more than happy to follow up with you and see if we can't get you some additional information to answer your questions. And with that, I will thank you all again for attending tonight's virtual program. If you are driving, be safe. I do see it looks like the snow is starting to fall. I know we have some folks on the call from various states, so I hope that you're not getting the snowfall that we're supposed to get. But thank you again. Have a great evening and go Rockets.